Kathy will talk
And welcome to
in
Alliance. Welcome to Alliance on the Move, folks. Wherever you're joining us from, do share the live stream as we begin our discussion this afternoon. Welcome again to Alliance on the Move. That is a really great introduction, and it always makes me want to shake just a little bit. But
It does. It does.
as we're coming on this evening, again, welcome to the Alliance on the Move. I'm privileged to be joined by our party leader, Mr. Kemraj Ramjatan, Member of Parliament, and also our party vice chair, Mrs. Kathy Hughes. Welcome, guys.
Thank you, Sharad. Good to be here.
Thank you, and glad to be back, Barbies, via the Zoom, and to be giving what you know are the topical issues of the day for the Barbicians. Glad to be here.
Fantastic. And as we're starting, I know we had an outreach just last
Yes.
weekend. Why don't we start there? Tell us about where this outreach was in any given order. I'll start with Kathy. Some of what was done and perhaps what we heard from the people who we interacted with during the course of the
That's
outreach.
right.
It was a really excellent day. I enjoyed myself. We did a lot of walking. We did a lot of talking. Um, Sharad, it's important to be able to reach out to persons in Region 5. Last week it was Region 5. And we spoke with some of the residents by Trafalgar Market. They have a lot of issues there, issues with the co-op and lands being, as far as they're concerned, being allocated to persons from outside of the co-op, of the area of Trafalgar, and persons that are not members of the co-op. And of course, those lands are traditional ancestral lands. So there were issues of that. I
Mhm.
think overall, what we did also is we went to reached out to some of the older members of the community. We gave them hampers, had some good discussions. A lot of the worry and concerns are in the area of flooding, the fact that a lot of persons lost produce, livestock, and certainly some of the things Kamraj and the team visiting spoke about was being able to look at and pushing the government to have some kind of claims process. We need to know what that is so that residents could get something back. I think we're going to talk later today about um, the National Resource Fund. Um, there were questions. People are suffering. A lot of areas need just roads and lights. Very worrying trend that things that we left as project in a budget to be implementing this year have now been struck off the budget, so to speak. So people are worried about that. And then, unfortunately, a lot of reports of persons feeling that they were being victimized, and even the COVID cash grant not being shared out fairly. So those are some of the key issues that we saw.
Yeah, I just want to add to that, Sharad. I also went up to the Abari Creek area, and I traveled into the Abari Creek, and I found out for myself the tremendous. It is you find it very difficult to describe, but it is real ugly situation up there in relation to how people have made complete losses of their livelihoods. All their chickens, all their goats and sheep and
Yeah.
cattle and rice and cash crops have been completely destroyed. And very many of them literally are suffering and requires counseling. I could have seen that in the eyes of some of the women there.
Yeah.
They said that the women are stronger, but emotionally they take it on.
Hmm.
And you could have seen it also in the eyes of the males, the breadwinners, as it were. And The difficulty that we see also is aggravated by what they told me about the basic needs assessors that went into the communities. When they started giving the community assessors the what they lost, the people are not believing them. They're shouting
Yeah.
back at them and saying that they're exaggerating. They're enlarging their claims. Apparently, you remember, Sherrod, when we
Yes,
were in Parliament, we supported and approved of a $10 billion grant appropriation for purposes of the flood relief and
correct,
also the COVID relief, right?
correct.
Remember that. We
Yes,
had questioned where it will go and so on, and we were given some answers. We never objected to that. A lot of people don't want to believe that we also supported that $10 billion. As a matter of fact, I had made a comment that it should be twice that amount. It should
Mhm.
be $20 billion. But whatever it is, we have seen that the agriculture minister in that parliament indicating that before he starts doing what is called the distribution of relief, he is going to make an assessment from those people who suffer. Now it is almost 6 weeks or 7 weeks now that that thing was done and the money appropriated. It's all at the Ministry of Finance. And when I went to these people there in Abari, not a single one of them have gotten any what you call relief, none whatsoever.
Mhm.
And the punishment, the sufferation is tremendous. And so all of this glib talk, this hollow talk that they talk that they're going to help people, people are in need now,
correct.
right away.
Yeah,
So, and then when you're going to send out these assessors to go write down a last 10 fowl, a last 20 duck, or a last so much sheep and goat and so on, and then say, well, we're going to go back. And that took almost 3 weeks for them to come. And now 3 weeks again pass, no money's coming down. There is nothing that we know of what will happen in Parliament as to the policy orientation, as to how the distribution will happen, because the best way is to carry it to Parliament to set out some policy guidelines as to it. We are not hearing nothing. So this thing will be further delayed. And if it is not delayed, it will be run by the executive branch with the total, in stealth and in secrecy. And you might have tremendous corruption there. I would prefer a parliamentary scrutiny of that kind of distribution. So I told the people all of that we have put aside a lot of money. And of course, we got more monies that can be obtained via what we call the Natural Resource Fund Act. And we're going to talk about that.
yeah,
But a lot of them are very, very disenchanted. That is also happening in Blackbush Polder. That is happening also in all of Region 6. The viewership here should appreciate this. And we have been saying fast track the relief that is going to be given to these people. But the government got its own pedestrian style about it. It is not wanting to gallop. It wants to be pedestrian, probably working out how much percentage they can get from the money. And that is the corruption that I fear that they probably, indulging in right now, rather than getting disbursements to those people so that they could manage their lives a little better.
Sherrod, one of the other things that came up was the fact that there needed to be a better system of warning residents of impending floods. So a lot of residents imagine that in some of the locations they don't get the range of television stations sufficiently. Internet is not all over in
yeah,
every single home, so that poses the challenges. So some people felt that if they'd had a little more warning, some of their livestock they would have been able to move to safe ground. A lot
That's
of
right.
women that had chickens lost that. And then the other thing that was quite sad that they were upset about is that when this happened, nobody told them what the claims process would be
yeah,
That's
if, for
right.
example, they needed to take pictures
yeah,
of all the dead chickens that they had. And as Kamrat said, they know that they had 100, but now automatically, the authority is going to speculate whether you had only 20, So there was a lot of anger and animosity building up in that area too.
Yeah, and I'm happy that you mentioned that because we were on another outreach in Region 6 a couple of weeks back, and we were in an area, for instance, called Lighthouse in New Amsterdam. And the folks were expressing that same discontent that here you had whole farms flooded, where people lost, one woman said they lost everything, and nobody had come up until that time to see them, to assess and to give them any sense of how are we going to get back any of this as a subsidy from the government or otherwise. And I said that to say this. Just last evening, I was looking at, I was glancing at the press conference that the installed vice president had. And I find it strange on a number of fronts. One, they seem to have now taken a deliberate move not to go on state media, not to use Chronicle, not to use NCN, not to use DPI, the taxpayers' funding, right? And even those media houses that they own, like the Times, they have abandoned all of those things, and they are paying other people to go on other programs to get their message out because nobody's listening to them. Really, nobody's listening to them at all. But what he said, what premised the discussion was interesting to me. The host was saying that he had asked for this press conference, was granted this press conference with the fraudulent vice president because of some instability in parts of the country. Now, I heard Kemraj. Well, let me start with Aubrey Norton. Aubrey Norton said that an opposition's role is to oppose, educate, and to agitate. Kemraj says it is to oppose, right? It is to depose and expose, right? So insofar as we're doing that, we are doing a good job as an opposition, right? We're doing a fantastic job as an opposition. And so they were talking, for instance, of our supposed attitude to the cash grant for the school children, right? This what do you call it? Because we care grant. Now, something you know this acutely. We have never opposed people receiving money from any government. As a matter of fact, we said go and collect the money because things tight in this country, and we're coming to that in a little bit. But Kathy brings some clarity to this issue of where we are, if not as an opposition, as a party on this because you care cash grant. And what is the stake here? Yeah.
Sherrod, that you started with a very good point. We certainly want Guyanese to get as much assistance. In fact, I come from the perspective that the PPP said they were going to give a 50,000 grant.
That's right.
So let's start off by saying when they were campaigning, they said it was going to be 50,000. Why are you only giving the people 19,000 now? Especially since the public servants have not received an increase for 2 years, you know? So that's the first thing I would like to say. It should be more, and more should be done. Now, funny enough, just this afternoon in Georgetown, I had someone ask me, and it's a teacher, ask me a very important question. She said that what she didn't like about the grant, and I did not start the discussion. She said what she didn't like about the grant was the fact that there was nothing inbuilt to guarantee that this was going to be used for children and children's education. And I found it very interesting because it's an important point. As she said, people in communities are now suffering. So once they get that money, although they say it's for education, it's for the betterment of young people and children in school, that money can be used for absolutely anything. We hope, and I hope, and I know there are lots of mothers that are and parents that are going to use it in some kind of way for the education of their child. And we want to encourage them to do that. So we want them to collect the money. We want them to ask how come they didn't get to 50,000 instead of 19. And we want to say, use it for your child's education. Now, what is interesting is that, you know, Sherrod, we had a very impressive and expansive program of putting internet all over the country.
Correct.
We actually had an advantage when COVID started because we had enough places in communities. We had enough schools that had internet already there, free internet paid for by the government. Unfortunately, some of those locations, here I'm talking about the hubs, as I mentioned, in schools, regional democratic offices, hospitals, all these different places. And once those locations, especially the hubs and schools, were managed, safe distancing put in place, imagine then that children that don't have access to Wi-Fi signal, to internet, that don't have a device, could be using those places, those locations in a safe manner. I want to remind you that we had close to maybe 40 locations in Region 6 alone, and about another 20 in Region 5, where there are community centers that had free internet access and computers. These were, for example, number 2 villages, Kanji. We had in Line Path, Crabwood Creek. We had Kilroy, Chesney, Firish, Port Morant, Albion, all over. I'm mentioning those because one thing I'm proud of is that we didn't make a distinction. We
That's
had a
right.
Blackbush folder. We didn't make a distinction as to who the supporters are in whichever area or whatever. We put all over the place, over 150. And so one thing that I worry about is that when you start to shut down those areas and the government hasn't put more internet in place, I would have liked to see if the coalition put in 150
Mm.
locations. I want this government to be boasting that they put in 200 locations. That has not happened. Now, why is this important? Because for today's, with the challenges of COVID and for today's learning, to be able to learn online for this last year, you would have had to have a device and internet.
Yeah.
And the reality is, many communities do not have that. Many households, I should say, do not have the luxury of being able to afford internet. Now, the cheapest internet plan with one of the providers is 5,780, and the other telecoms giant is 5,480, something like that. So if you got $19,000, you're only paying for internet approximately for 3 months at maximum. The other thing about it too is that imagine you got to have a device. Now,
Correct.
part of our plan was that every child by 2021 would have had a device for learning, a laptop or a really high-end tablet. My worry is that we've had two budgets. We've actually heard absolutely nothing about the plans to give every child a device and also to be able to give internet free of charge to individuals that can't afford it. So, what it means now is that if you have money, if your parents have money, if you have a luxury of a house with internet, a computer, and a
Yep.
nice space to sit down, then you can learn. The thousands of people, poor people, children, have been out of school for a year and a half and have not learned. And in closing, I just want to say, I don't want people to think that there aren't things that are done. In the rural parts of the USA, those poor indigenous communities, what they have done is that they've bought a portable internet device and given to each household where their children that can't afford internet. And that device, once you turn it on and once you're logged in to a school online program, to what we would call our Ministry of Education or an educational website, then you don't have to pay. Telephone companies are doing that in North America and in Europe. I was asked about 6 weeks ago about this, and I called the two telephone companies. Neither of them had access, had special internet programs for school children, internet
Yeah.
packages, a
Yeah.
data plan just for school children. The government hadn't approached them and asked them to provide such services. So, my message today to everybody listening is that this government, this country needs to be doing more to help education. And there are many parts of the world. I've given you an idea of all the different things that could be done to ensure you still are able to have children learning at these difficult times.
Kathy
Yes.
is so right there, Sharon. I want to I want to make this point that education and health are the two major pillars for a nation's development. Education, in my opinion, is far greater because at an individual level, you can look after your health, you can go do your exercising, your eating right, and whatever. But those kids, especially under COVID or pandemics of that nature, or flooding, and we're going to have more flooding because of climate change. We see what is happening in Belgium and Germany and
Yeah.
France and those European countries now. We have to understand that these big disasters and diseases are going to affect generationally affect the children. It's a whole year now since we can't get our kids to school. And I could understand that because, of course, of the COVID. But what do? You do what is now regarded as the bypass, meaning you do it just like how me and you doing it here, but via Zoom, via the technologies that are available. And what Cathy and our cabinet had decided since in 2018, 2017 time is that we must get on with this thing called the utilization of these technologies. Just like in the security sector that Cathy helped me in with the Huawei people to get the surveillance cameras. Sometimes you can't get enough good policemen and you got to go use the technology. And there it is, you see. And what we had wanted to do is to ensure that we Wi-Fi all of these places or internet them, as I use the term, make sure that they're internet ready. Even the most distant corners of Guyana, because those things have the technologies you can use to ensure that you can get them connected, the connectivity all over the place. And then you can get the students learning from the school program or the Ministry of Education program. What are we going to have here now? It's one complete year of disaster. And that could be meaning quite a bit because next year, that form that wasn't there, you got to do back that whole class to that student. Whereas had you the technologies and so on. But sometimes I get on bad. But I think I am vindicated when I get on bad. This government like when people ignorant, because then they're going to use that same social media guy that you say you talk to and so on. And the guys just got to go and fool them, give them a whole lot of disinformation, a lot of fake news, and their support base will believe them. So you don't need bright people, right-thinking people. You need dull people. And that is why sometimes I get the impression that is what the PPP wants. It wants people to just cut cane, fetch them on the shoulder, throw them inside a punt, drink rum Friday afternoon, and then go vote PPP Monday morning. That is what they want.
Yeah.
And Barbicians must understand this. We must climb out of that culture. And that is what the AFC has been talking for years on this television program. Climb out of that culture where you can think for yourself and do other things rather than these non-liberating activities like cotton cane, and also to the extent of knowing that it is a black hole. It will not make profits for this country anytime. Don't bother with CIS, Sing, and all of them.
I think just today in the media, they were saying that Gaisuko now has to relook at all the targets because they recognize they're not going to meet the target.
Precisely. And we're going to get a December rains here for the next crop too.
Yep.
And they went in there, and that's in financial paper. Remember, Sharad? They wanted an additional $1.5 billion for Gaisuko.
Yeah.
Take the $1.5 billion and give the children tablets or computers, laptops.
Yep. And some free internet.
Investment.
And some free internet in the homes.
Exactly.
And Sharad, those are the things. I know people would say that, we were in government. I'm proud of the platform that we left. And what we're trying to say is we are fighting for the people. We collect that 19,000. We wanted everybody to collect to get the COVID cash grant. This is taxpayers' money that is being spent. And as a Guyanese, you have a right to it. And so people in communities must be the ones that stand up. They must be saying, we demand more. You mustn't just accept this. This is just so important. One of the things we heard on our visit is that so many communities, every community we went to, there were problems with the NDC or the RDC.
Yeah.
We did the budget since March. Up to now, some of them ain't draw down any money. Street lights that they were promised. The bridge, stuff for schools.
Yeah. And Kathy, I'm actually happy that you touched on that issue because it brings me to an issue happening currently in Rose Hall. We were advised that there is a no confidence motion that is pending against the chairman of the Rose Hall Town Council, the vice chairman, and the treasurer, and it touches on concerns, as we say in law, on that very issue that you talked about there, because according to the mover of this motion, and I made to understand it's persons across the political divide of the town council are moving this motion. For instance, at point 4 in the motion, it says subvention projects. A special meeting was held on the 9th of July to discuss projects that were submitted to be done for the year. The mayor summoned a special meeting with an agenda of work projects to be undertaken with half part of the subvention. When questioned, he said it was himself, the deputy mayor, and the SOW acting alone who sat and made the decisions as to what was going to be, what projects were going to be catered for under this subvention, excluding 14 other councillors. And the question, for instance, this procurement of street lights, crusher run, a dump truck, and compact, and so on. So again, this is the PPP at work in their own constituency, strong arming their own people.
Yep. Well, in fact, we also heard that in many of the councils, they've been given just about, it varies between $3 million and $5 million for the year, which really is a small amount. And when we recognize that fund, the fund from our oil revenues, I think Kemraj had said a couple of weeks ago, should have about $400 million in it now, right?
That's correct.
Right. This is where monies to RDCs and NDCs need to be increased. But what is sad too is that they're only getting $5 million, but we're being told that the minister in some cases is actually saying how half of that must be spent, or a third of that must be spent. We got about 3 or 4 of reports like that, so it's a problem. It's a problem.
And it is going to be a problem, Sherrod, because of what is called a culture of control and commandism that the PPP and especially Jagdeo wants. He does not want a consensual arrangement for leadership, whereby everybody will know how the monies are going to be spent and ultimately fine-tune all the arguments to make one decision that everybody could circle the wagon around, if you understand. And that is the difficulty inside of the PPP there. And right now, because of the young set of people that they have, and with Jagdeo as the Lord, as it were, you feel that this is going to now seep down to the NDCs and the councils at the various municipalities. And it is seeping down because people like the chair and the vice chair feel that they're the bosses. But they must learn to give an extended consultation that is meaningful. And that is what true democracy is all about. So that the people, can be participant in that process. If they don't buy in that we need a tractor and a trailer to pick up the garbage, you're not going to have, even though you might very well find that it is a good asset to have, that the people are going to make good use of it. They must learn to buy into the decision of the NDC or the municipality. And that is what is not happening here. It is not happening largely across the country with the NDCs and so on. And that is why I have indicated that we really have to go down talking to people on the ground as we did in Region 5 and Region 6 the previous weeks and so on, and to let them understand it is their day. This dynamic thing called democracy means that they got to participate too. Otherwise, they're going to be left back. Unilateral decisions are going to be made, and that is not good leadership. You want everybody to buy into the thing, and that is strong leadership. And how you argue your case, and then everybody then argue around it and say, well, this is the way we must go. We are not getting that. It is control freakism. They want to control the monies, they want to control the policies, and the people must just go and say, aha, yes. And we, it's not going to happen. It is not going to happen. And that is why I think also, finally, on this issue, they don't want local government elections this year. They're not going to have it, although it is due this year. And you bet they're going to utilize all manner of excuses and pretext, namely that the Elections Commission is not ready. They don't want Lowenfield to hold the elections as CEO and this and that and whatever. But like they never did for 22 years or 21 years whilst they were in government, they didn't hold local government elections. They're going to start doing this thing wrong side up now, although we, in just a 5-year term, did it twice. They don't like local democracy. They don't like democracy per se. So it is important that point that Kathy made.
Sherrod, sorry to cut in again, but one of the other troubling things that we got a lot of feedback on was the PPP's program of instituting and creating the CDCs instead of the proper local government structures where persons have gone through a process of being elected as leaders from amongst their communities. They're coming in, and in many areas they're selecting their friends and family. It certainly cannot be called a legitimate process that comes from the people, because there's one thing to have some people select you and say you ahead, or the CDC, we form in a group, and it's another far more democratic process when you are elected. It's part of a proper elections process to lead, selected and elected from amongst your peers in your communities. So that's something else that is bringing a lot of discontent. And overall, I think that is the part that bothers me the most. That in every aspect, in every sphere of life, there seems to be so much discontent, so much animosity, so much fighting. And this does not augur well for a country. We're supposed to have so many great opportunities, and yet listen to the people grumbling and unhappy and suggestions of racism, one group being victimized as opposed to another. I mean, you would have thought that on the first anniversary of a PPP government, everybody would have been celebrating, or the majority of the people celebrated, except for a few people now in the opposition. And even some of their own supporters have concerns.
Kathy, as you're on discontent, it was Martin Luther King who coined that phrase, the summer of our discontent, and that is where we are. I remember towards the end of the first budget being passed under this PPP regime, Kemraj, again, I call your name, was making an analogy concerning Bora. I remember distinctly. And how they had ridiculed him in the National Assembly, those guys on the other side, because here they want to talk about these big macro issues, and Kemraj is at the local level feeling the plight of the common man. We didn't get flood yet.
Yeah.
We weren't where we are economically as yet. And Kemraj instinctively, as that superior politician, gone to the grassroots level talking about Bora, and young Charles Ramson, who you clearly pointed out, they don't do a lot of reading and don't know a lot of history. Was one of them on the bandwagon. Bora, how you come to national, let me talk about Bora. Now the analogy is you can trade Boro in the market for I'll use Allion. Prices have prices have gone up.
Yep.
Boro in 2020 July was $200. It's $300 now. Bygone was $200. It's $500 now. Cabbage was $240. It's $360 now. Tomato in July 2020 was $160. It's $400 now.
Wow, yeah.
Squash was $180. It's $500 now. Things have gone way, way up. And we're importing Boro, bygone, cabbage, tomato, and squash.
So
And
Yeah,
this,
well, this,
market right here.
go
so
ahead,
this
Kathy.
this is where we have to be, very practical and realistic. You get $19,000 one off,
Mhm.
but how much you're paying more every week for
Yeah.
all those different basic
Yeah.
items that is food you're putting on the table.
Yeah.
It is not, yeah, and what it has caused is a literally an impact. It means nothing because of
Yeah.
the price rise. The
Yep.
inflation has eaten up about
Getting power.
yes, right, the spending power of that $19,000 that you will have now.
Yeah.
And it is not only in relation to these vegetables and bora and baigan and so on. This thing has to do with clothing. This thing has to do
Construction
with
material.
construction
Construction,
items.
cement.
I was doing some construction in Quarantine 47 Village in my old lady's house there.
Yep.
And my goodness, the price just jumped up by almost 40%.
Yep.
And when you ask the man, the carpenter, and painter by, but we're going on here. They said, Bahas, will you go at the shop itself and find out the prices all gone up? So when
Yep.
you cater that you're going to spend $2 million, $3 million, you're going to spend $5 million.
Yep.
The thing is crazy. And now, with so much of flood, which has caused property losses, the construction items that these, especially the Barry people who are telling me, look, when they watch that house there, look what gone and this and that, the cow pen falling apart, the chicken pen falling apart. We got to now go and get all of them things. What could they do?
Yeah.
And that is why I'm saying that when they're trying to give, they're not giving with any meaning or good intentions, because the impact of this inflationary spiral has caused that purchasing power to be dented, so that effectively it is nothing that is being given. It brings you back to the days of 2019 probably. And so it is not anything to talk about or boast about. But of course you're going to get a PVP boasting. Oh, them na mingi ayo nothing. Abi agi ayo 19,000 now. So what is the
Well,
19,000 about?
mean,
Yes.
well,
And
we have
must understand that.
we have to remember that public servants, the last
Right.
budget of the APNU coalition, AFC coalition government, had an increase in salary from 50 something thousand right up to 70,
Yeah.
right? So, and that's not a one-off. I think this is the other thing that people need to realize. That wasn't
Every
a
year.
one-off.
Every year.
Every
year.
month you got that extra
Yeah. And still getting it.
and still getting it, right? And now, so you had that increase over from 50 all the way to 70, the last budget of the APNU AFC. You've gotten nothing for, a year and a half.
Two
Right?
budgets.
For two budgets, you've gotten
Yeah.
nothing.
2020 and 2021.
Yes. And the economy itself is spiraling out of control, although it's supposed to be all these great things happening.
Economic dynamism was promised.
Exactly. It is not trickling down to the people we spoke to in Region 5 and Region 6.
Yeah.
And it is not for a want of not having monies. I think this is where we should bring in the Natural Resource Fund. It is not Barbicians. It is not for a want of not having monies. Guyana is a rich, rich country. We got about 379 million US dollars inside of a Federal Reserve Bank in America, the oil monies. And thank God your AFC APNU coalition government signed up that agreement so that we can get monies in 2020 when it started coming in, 2019 and now 2020 and 2021. Because we signed the agreement in 2016, a lot of people cuss me up, social commentators, All of them say, what kind of agreement them sign up there? Well, we signed up because of the fact that it was necessary. And we wanted monies and so on, and knowing very well that what you call renewables and a whole set of other things can go bad. So you better start checking out the aisle as early as possible. Now we got in the vicinity, by the end of this year, it should come up to about almost $500 million US. Now, what do you do with that money? We created this act and a kind of a special arrangement that we politicians must play a secondary role. The primary role must be played by the people like you out there, the trade unionists, the businessmen, the regional people, some regional leaders and so on. 21
religious people, civil
religious
society,
people,
community
indigenous
group.
people, all of them.
Yeah.
And we put it in there so that they will form what is called an investment committee. They will decide what they will spend it on, especially in emergency like the flood and the COVID and now everybody and so on. You know, that government of the PPP don't want to go and operationalize that fund. When I was at Abari, they sent two of the PPP guys to talk stupidness there. And they said, well, what make I this not been operationalize the thing? Well, we not had no flooding there, and the money was now starting to come in.
Yeah.
If you understand what I mean. But now the money has come in. Why is it 1 year after the PPP is not operationalizing it and selecting, or, you know, by Parliament, getting the names of the 21 people? They don't want that. You know what they want to do now? They want to amend that act. Barbicians, y'all got to get up and get. They want to amend that act so that Ashni Singh, Irfan Ali, and Bharat Jagdeo, the three of them, must control that natural resource fund. They want it to be based on what is called a Kazakhstan model, whereby those three players are going to be the biggest controllers of that oil money. And we put it on a separate independent thing, a 21-member committee. And then we set up another committee called the Public Accountability Committee. It's all there in the law.
Yeah.
Even not the social commentators didn't know about it. But when the law passed, we told them that this is based on the Norwegian model. Norway was the country that tell us this is the best thing to do. 50% is going to be held back for the next 20 years spending. But right now, 50% of, say, $379 million. That's a lot of money. That is over 180 something million dollars US that we can start spending if we operationalize the money, the committees, and so that we could get monies to help our Guyanese people in this flood thing and so on. All of that. Buy tablets for the children. Buy all the things that we are talking about.
Give everybody that had a loss a check.
Exactly.
In these difficult times, a man that has lost, 16 cows, a whole set of bees. We met persons a couple weeks ago that lost bees. We heard of people in Region 5 last week that lost chickens.
That's right.
How are they going to start back again? Where are they getting the money to buy a new set of cattle? More chicken, who lost, give these people a check to get going again.
Yeah.
Yes.
Kathy, a check seems to be something foreign. I saw what we're doing here. A similar program has just been rolled out in the US, where they are giving what they call direct payments to families, right? Because to recover from COVID. And part of what was issued by the White House says, thanks to the child tax credit in the American Rescue Plan, direct payments to nearly all working families starts today. Look for a deposit labeled child CTC in your bank account. Now we here are so backward. We are running around with some huge suitcases of money, like Father Christmas. The people are grateful for the money because things tight, right? Yep. But again, like Father Christmas, we have done nothing innovative in 11 months, and we're struggling badly. Now, it seems that a trend is emerging locally in which there are different strokes for different folks. And the people in Berbice got to be concerned. Now, Annette Ferguson, our coalition partner member, was charged recently for merely reposting something that was being shared by numerous, if not thousands, of people already on social media concerning this death squad group. And she's now charged and before the courts. There's a woman this whole country saw, one of the Dalrymple girls, Dalrymple, bite a policeman almost 3 months ago, and she's yet to be charged, right? Yet to even perhaps give a report to the police in this country, right? And with that, you got the vice chair of Region 6 was involved in an accident that resulted in a fatality. And the DPP is still considering, is still putting together a legal advice. Almost 3 months later as well. They aren't rushing to charge.
Yeah.
They aren't rushing to charge at all. So Barbicians should be concerned about this. Because
that's not true.
Different strokes to different folks. Kemraj.
Yes, look, and I want my Barbicians, who I know have profound consciences. They're religious people, and even those who are not religious, they have a sense of what is right from wrong. And this inequality of treatment when it comes to those who are opposed to the government as those who are for the government is going to bring tremendous resentment that is going to probably lead to bigger conflagrations, bigger fires, as it were. If you look now at what's happening in Cuba, in South Africa, all over the place, it's the inequalities that are there, the massive poverty. And this is what is also in Guyana in a sense. Although we get plenty money in the Reserve Bank for the oil funds, but it is not coming down back to the people on the ground.
Yeah.
So when you now not only denying them the monies and creating inequality and poverty, but also at the political level, you are having differential treatment for those who are PPP supporters and members as against those who are oppositionists. We are going to have a season of discontent that could very well come long before we think in Guyana. And that is why I'm urging this government, urging Barbicians too, to talk to them, because I know they got a big support base in Barbice. Please tell them that is wrong. I know of a number of Barbicians who, in some of the coastal villages there, when the fellas walk with that COVID relief and he see a black man house and he pass the house, them Kulibai said, hold on a minute, why you not give them people that? Oh, I didn't know them, I didn't know them. And they were very adamant. Please give the person, because they're punishing too, just like we. And I'm glad that they did that. They did that out of their humanity. They did that out of their good consciences. And Barbicians are well known for that, not only their hospitality. And we must ensure that we do not have different strokes for different folks or unequal treatment. That is the death of this society. We must ensure that all of our people get whatever the benefits are or the reliefs are. And ensure that you talk about it too to those people.
Now, Kamak, that's such an important point. And I had someone who called me with a similar kind of story. Guyanese of East Indian origin who very upset. This is Parika Bakdam area. And he said that there were only 2 African Guyanese families. And I'll tell you the truth, I have a feeling the man was crying just from the tone. And I was close to tears because what he said was that at the end of the day, so the two African families did not get the grant.
That's right.
He said that he really wanted to give them back his own, but he knew that if he gave it back to them, it's just one of the people walking down the street that would take it. So, and he needed it, so he took it. But what he said is that, he said, Miss Kathy, we live as a family in the street. When I don't get home, I know my neighbor keeping an eye on my children. and and so he was upset because of that. And this is where I want to say to people in Berbice that we have to live together as one people. Once we start to create those divides, and some have and some don't have, you are going down a path of destruction. You are unofficially starting what South Africa was based on: one race of people getting some and others being left behind.
And
And when
apartheid.
you right, and when you have that kind of environment, history shows us nobody wins,
That's
everybody
it.
loses.
That's
Yeah.
right.
There's enough cases of that. You cannot win like that, because it's only the person that is being dispossessed. It's only a matter of time that he can decide or she can decide that they have nothing to lose because they're not getting anything. And then who is it they're coming after? People
That's
that
right.
have,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So we all have a stake in ensuring that whether you're rich, you're poor, you're black, you're white, you're Amerindian, East Indian, whatever, we have to have a Guyana where everybody is treated equally. Now, when you talk about technology, I know because I have family that are American born. They got a check. They have so far gotten two checks in this COVID environment, Sharad,
Hmm.
deposited straight to their bank account.
That's right.
Yeah.
And why do they do that? We have checks that we do for pensions. We got people that are paid into bank accounts. Everybody, lots of people have a TIN number. You got GRA. The data is there. Why are we not just automatically paying every Guyanese that is paying taxes, for example? I know in the US, once you're in the tax system, right, you automatically got the first check of a 1,400 US. And then you got another check of, I think it's another 1,200 US. And now you're getting this child credit tax.
Hmm.
That way, you automatically guarantee that you're being fair. You don't have somebody walking down the street being subjective. Well, I know she family and I don't like it and who had story, and
Rent,
that
rent, rent,
immature nonsense.
rent
In this
house,
day and
own
age, we
house.
exactly in this day and age we should not be operating like that. Much less when you got COVID and you got people walking
Yeah.
down interacting in the streets. It is sheer stupidness. And one of the things I like to say is the PPP government likes to say, oh no, this is not based on race and all these discriminations are not true. Why is there such a discussion and so many people that say that they get a pink slip, they can't get their money and that kind of stuff? If the PPP government were committed, we would have seen a list in the
Yeah.
newspapers and scrolling on TV and in radio.
Yeah.
Anybody that didn't get their cash grant, come to this location at such a time, and we can sort it out and make sure you get your money. Just like how they have a campaign for us to go and take our vaccine. And let me mention, I am vaccinated and I'm encouraging people to go and take your vaccine. Once you have a vaccine, you're not going to die. We're doing vaccine programs at stadium, at community grounds, whatever. Why haven't we put in place similar approaches for people that ain't get the COVID money?
Yeah.
That's
Until
right.
they do that, the perception has been created that you're not being fair.
Yeah.
So let me wait and see if that's going to happen.
Yeah. Fantastic. And you know, on that same tenor, we saw two motions being brought recently before being tabled before the House. A motion of no confidence against the installed Minister of Health, installed Minister of Home Affairs. Now, you had a motion, for instance, brought against Mr. David Patterson, right? We didn't see Sherlock Isaac perhaps having to scrutinize it to see whether it fit the bill, and then it being sent to the Attorney General's chamber to see if it fit the bill, and then perhaps to the CCJ and the World Court to see if we get the one paragraph right, if a full stop is missing or what have you. But we've seen these two bills now being subjected to this high scrutiny, right? And we talk about different strokes for different folks, but tell us, you know, we know that the COVID numbers are going up. We now passed 20,000 confirmed cases, over 500 deaths on the Frank Anthony's watch, and crime is just going through the roof. It's just going through the roof. Give us some more about what brought these two bills into fruition.
Well, if I could start, Kathy,
Yeah.
let me start. Yeah,
You're the expert on it.
We just have a
Yeah.
couple of minutes left, folks.
that's right. It is important to understand the rationale why. We were trying to create opposition debates and opposition motions, and the speaker was blocking a majority of them. The very first one was Jureta Finance in relation to Amerindian issues and the naming of the Amerindian ministry into Indigenous Peoples Ministry for a certain historical and cultural reasons. And he blocked it. He says no, that he's not going to deal with that. That's an important, very important, significant motion. He used what is called his discretionary rule to disqualify it, saying that that is exclusively the jurisdiction of the executive branch of government to name whatever ministries they want. But that can happen. The executive branch could name it, but we could call for a debate on the issue. And that is what apparently this speaker, who I had great, good things to talk about initially in my first speech, I am starting to query that now. Then we had the other one.
You only know started?
Well, I am a little pedestrian about my friends from long time. And he's one of my friends from a long time, Kathy.
Okay.
So bear with me with him. But he really, the thing is looking bad now. The flaring, that had to do with oil and gas. And oil and gas is an important sector. The PPP wants to shut us out from the oil and gas sector. So when we set up this flaring and how the Exxon is violating the contract, or at least to go and find out whether Exxon is violating the contract, that motion was blocked in Parliament. Then there was the flooding, and somebody, I think it was Mahipal, that brought a motion on the urgent public importance issue of the flooding and what has caused the flooding and what should be done about the flooding.
Yeah.
The speaker gone said that the thing is not urgent. What could have been more urgent than that flooding motion?
Kamraj, on the same day he was blocking that motion, the president was gazetting that the flood was now a national
Absolutely.
disaster.
I remember that. I remember that. As a matter of fact, somebody mentioned that.
30,000 people.
Yes.
Remember, that was a headline in the papers that day.
That's
30,000 people. But Kamraj, you're absolutely correct, because people need to understand that this is an opportunity for us to talk about it and debate it.
That's
and
right.
if the parliament if the speaker doesn't allow you to even discuss it, then you realize how bad we really are. I don't know if the speaker doesn't understand that he is almost his own president over the parliament.
That's correct.
He's expected to be independent, to allow debate, to act with fairness. And the fact you don't even want to talk about these things that are threatening people's livelihoods and future is sad.
And the important thing is that he uses rules that are, outdated, like that flaring of the gas and the Exxon and the oil gas thing. He says somebody bring some court matter. And because of the court matter, we, the very important lawmakers of the country now, are blocked. I don't know what we say in Parliament would influence a judge. And I told him that sub judice rule has been abandoned for about 15, 20 years now in England. But he utilized the rule to block the thing. Now, because of this, the blocking by the speaker of all our motions, they got, as I know, and a number of the lawyers on our side know, you can't block a no confidence motion against minister. You cannot. You got to allow the motion to go, and then we're going to deal with it. And in those kinds of motions, we will now talk about the health sector. We're going to talk about the security sector where all this crime now happening, and nobody seems to want a debate. Well, we will now debate it. And so it is for that reason, Barbicians, understand why we are doing. Because they did not only prorogue Parliament for 98 days since that March thing, man.
Correct.
Right now, they're trying to prorogue it by the disqualification of all these motions that we brought. So we're going to have a kind of a prorogation.
Yeah.
So parliamentarians in the opposition can't raise non-point. Well, we are now going to raise it via no confidence motion. And we are doing damn well in relation to that, because it is two sectors that we can deal with in a very, lengthy fashion and deal with all the issues. And those are two very important ones. Of course, they now want to go and bring one against Joe Harmon. But like, they fail to realize that no confidence motion against the opposition leader are not like those against ministers.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Constitution provides that only when 10 out of the 30 parliamentarians that on our side, the opposition side, tell the Speaker we want to remove Harmon, then you could bring a no confidence motion against Harmon. You cannot. We had passed that amendment to the Constitution, 184.3 and 4, Article 183 and 4. And so I don't understand what kind of nonsense Anil Nandalal tell Mark Phillips to bring. And now, but what is worse of all is that now that these motions are there, the Speaker gone and asked Mr. Anil Nandalal, who must have been the fella, I don't know what we find about Anil Nandalal, but on matters like this, the head of the legislative branch, which is the Speaker of the House, should have gone and asked for an independent legal opinion. That is what I remember Raphael Trotman doing.
Yeah,
that is what
people in the you could go to people in the Caribbean.
Exactly.
You go to people in Canada,
or UK, United Kingdom,
England, whatever, because they are independent. Yeah, I know we don't have much more time, but people need to understand that it is the opposition members that select the leader of the opposition.
That's right.
We're the ones that choose who we want to be our leader, the opposition. And the PPP did that when they were in opposition. So it's just foolishness, stupidness, because they have no decision on who is selected, and therefore they have no role to play in saying whether this person is the right person or not, or if they have confidence in him. Only people in the opposition themselves could come to the table and say, you know what, we're not happy with the person we selected anymore. And that has not happened. So it's really sad. And then, Sharon, let's not forget, 3 weeks ago, we still had over 300 questions that had not been answered. In Parliament, the way Parliament works is that our constituencies say, find out about this, find out about that. And we asked the minister a question. Imagine having over 300 questions and the minister don't take the time to answer. In England, the prime minister every week is in the parliament, standing up, answering questions.
I just want to say this as we close. The day the government got confidence in the opposition leader, I can be very worried. I can be very worried. Folks, your closing thoughts. 30 seconds.
Well, Barbicians, we want you to pay attention to what we're saying here. I must state that the guardrails of democracy, as we know them and as we fought for them, are being dismantled in this country. And we must not allow that dismantling to continue. We have to put a halt to it. And you, Barbicians, are a bulwark in that halting process. Please listen to these programs, understand the issues, and then try in your own way to put a halt to the dismantling of the guardrails of democracy. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the evening.
Kathy?
Sharad, I want to just quickly say in closing, COVID is a real thing. I see the Minister of Health today said that he agrees that there are possibly the variants here in Guyana. That's what Paho was saying close to 6 weeks ago, and many people put 2 and 2 together. But anyway, I want to say to the citizens...
He's pedestrian on these issues.
Yes, I want to say that if you get a vaccine, we know for sure you're not going to die. I know it's a personal decision, but I encourage everybody to take the vaccine.
Absolutely.
And do your own research online. Make sure you're comfortable. And I know at the end of the day, it is your decision, but stay safe, wear your mask, and make sure you social distance. Stay home with your family instead of going out in large groups. Thank you. Take care.
Great. Thanks,
Thank you.
Kemraj Ramjitan, leader of the Alliance for Change, and Kathy Hughes, the vice chairman of the Alliance for Change. Thanks for joining us on Alliance for Change. Alliance on the Move. Thanks, guys.
And
Thanks,
thanks,
Sharon.
Sharad.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sharad.
Great.